Welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, the go-to construction podcast for construction professionals seeking inspiration, education, or motivation for the next steps in their career. Each Monday, you'll be joined by me, Mick Donaghy, Managing Director of Gedden Executive Recruitment and a respected name from the industry. A construction leader, a business owner, or someone in the thick of the action. The whole premise of this podcast is for you to get something from it. An idea, a connection, a mentor, whatever it is, I hope you get it. And I hope you enjoy the show. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of The Takeoff. Today we are joined by another special guest. We have Andrew Lowther on the show. Andrew is currently the Queensland manager of Gallagher Jeffs. Hailing from a quantity surveying background, started off his career in Scotland, is now heading up Gallagher Jeffs in Brisbane. Previously was the head of project development services for JLL for over 8 years. Really excited to have you on the show today. Andrew, thank you for being a guest. Do you mind sort of giving yourself a bit of an introduction, who you are, what it is that you do? I can never do it proper justice.
Thanks, Mick, and appreciate the opportunity. I hail originally from the UK. Been in Australia now for 16 years. Met and married a lady from Charleville in Western Queensland, so a country girl. And we lived in the UK for 10, and we've been here since 2007. So 2 kids, wonderful children, both grown up as young adults, 22 and 18, boy and a girl. So some challenges exist with those guys and girls. But home is Queensland. It's a place that I came to in the mid-90s when I left university and decided that there was more to life than living in the miserable cold Scotland, although that's always been my home and I'll always be a passionate Scotsman, like I'm sure you're a passionate Irishman, Mick, but yep. Queensland is now home, very much so, and I'm passionate about the city, I'm passionate about the state, I have been for many years, and I'm fully ingratiated into all of the aspects that it provides, so I love it.
An incredible place, I absolutely love. Just the vibrancy, the positivity that within Queensland at the moment, it's quite hard to put your finger on, you know. There's just an energy that's hard to replicate. And I think that's just with obviously the vision, the plans, everything that's going on at the moment. But one thing I'm really keen to talk about is how did you get involved in the industry? Andrew, tip me back.
Take you back in my 53 years of, how did I get going? Look, it's a story that is one that I tell regularly to anyone that wants to listen. So I left school. My father passed away when I was relatively young. I was 16 at school, left school with nothing, no qualifications of any note. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. And to be honest with you, I wasted my last 2 years at school. I probably should have stuck in a bit harder, but didn't, and used my father's passing as a bit of an excuse, to be honest with you, now that I reflect back. And then realised when I left school what was I going to do. So went and worked in a couple of sort of dead-end jobs, which provided, you know, as they always do in these environments, some levels of experience that you always will carry forward into your later life. But I worked out pretty quickly that I needed to do something. So while I was working 2 jobs, one was Edinburgh Regional Council, I went to night school and studied all the subjects I didn't pass at school to get my grades up. So that was quite hard, leaving work at 5 o'clock and going to college at 7 o'clock and studying and working till 9 o'clock and then having to do all the assignments. Managed to get my grades up and then thought, well, what am I going to do with this? University, never even considered university. And it was actually a friend of my father's who, as many people do in that situation when you don't have a father figure in your life, they used to kind of reach out. And I now look back, they were effectively the guiding hands on my shoulders. What are you going to do with your life? Where are you going to go? These sorts of conversations over 2 or 3 of my father's good friends. And one of them was a quantity surveyor. He worked for Miller Home, and I went in and sat in the office one day because he said, why don't you come and see what we do? And had a really good conversation with him, and he's still a family friend to this day. I enjoyed my time at Miller Homes the 1 day a week for a couple of weeks, and started to do a bit of digging around university courses that were available in the QS world, and I realised that it provided a little bit of a different smattering of bits and pieces that may or may not of interest. The legal side, the contractual side was always a bit of an interest, so there was an element of the course that provided that. And then I looked at university courses and thought, well, I'll give it a shot. So I did, and applied and got in, and that was Dundee. And the rest from that perspective, in terms of walking out with a Bachelor of Science in Quantity Surveying, I thought, well, okay, I'll start applying to various places to see whether or not they will take me. I thought, well, I'll go to Australia. Let's have a look what's going on in Australia. So came over here and I worked for WT Partnership for 3 or 4 years as a junior cadet in the days when you used to have to fold drawings into envelopes with the preface facing up, so the contractors opened it. And the rest, they say, is kind of a bit of history. I did, at that stage when I was in Australia, had no visa, and then went back to the UK, got into another it was actually tax depreciation through Napier Blakely Winter. So then the thread of my career from then on has always had a thread of QS in it. But although I haven't spent the majority of my time doing mainstream quantity surveying. I was actually, I'm sure the guys at WT, if they remember, will tell you I wasn't a great QS.
Well,
so there you go.
Quite interesting. I didn't actually know that you started your career off in Brisbane, and look, you've made that sort of circle back living here now. So, what was Brisbane like then? And I guess talk to me about who you were at that moment in your life.
So, who was I? I was this young, inexperienced, 10 foot tall and bulletproof, I knew everything kind of individual. And I guess that's probably one of the major reasons why I wasn't a particularly good QS, because no one could teach you. You knew everything. You've got a university degree. And I look back now, and those individuals in my professional life at that stage were reaching out to try and coach, whatever it was, mentor, I suppose. And I think if I had my life over again, I would accept those advances, and I probably rejected them. Which is a regret. But yeah, I wish that my attitude at that stage was different and was more warming and welcoming to others coming in to provide, an environment where you would learn. My father always used to say to me, and this resonates even more so today, that, if you don't learn something in a day, it's a wasted day. And I wish I'd adopted that more prevalent in my early years as a QS. What was Brisbane like? Wow, different city then, mid-90s. It was Admiralty Towers at the end of the Story Bridge. They were just being built.
Oh, wow.
So lots of residential going on. The Olympics were looming large in Sydney. Brisbane International Airport was on massive expansion, new terminal, all that sort of stuff. They were talking about building a monorail that used to go around Brisbane, which was going to be a tourist attraction, because the issue then was that tourists would arrive in Brisbane and either go south or north. So it wasn't really viewed as this new world city back then. It was still very much a developing, young. It didn't have the vibrancy that it has now. It didn't have the known restaurants or the known locations to go. South Bank was there, but was very much in its infancy at that stage, and still very much a lot of development and progress to happen. And now I look back to where it is now as a city, and it's chalk and cheese. It's a completely different vibe, as you experience yourself.
It's quite interesting you mentioned about the Olympics. Sort of, there's a shadow of the Olympics coming for Sydney. There was a lot of development. There's some parallels to where things are now. We've got 2032 Olympic Games in 8 years. There's a lot of movement and opportunity in the city, shall I say. What made you go to Brisbane over those sort of bigger cities like Melbourne, Sydney?
Well, I'll be honest. My first foray into coming out to Queensland, I actually followed an Aussie girl who was from the Gold Coast, and then that was the reason why we landed here. And then in those days, there was it was a de facto visa. The relationship didn't work out, so I went back to the UK, and my plan was always to come back. And then through who's still a friend today, a guy I worked with at WT, he was traveling in the UK. And he said, and I happened to be in Edinburgh, and he happened to be in Edinburgh, and he said, I've met this girl, she's really nice, and she's got a friend. And I said, well, I'm going back to Australia on the Wednesday. But anyway, we went out in Edinburgh on the Saturday night, had a few drinks. I had a few too many. And I met my wife, who was, as I say, a country Queensland girl from Charleville, and her parents were in Brisbane at that time. So when we decided in 2007, Brisbane was always going to be the place. And I knew what I was coming to, because I'd lived here for a year and a half previously, and I just felt it was such a great place to be at that stage. And the experience I got as a young QS working on those kind of larger type projects, albeit measuring concrete and reinforcement, but still it was an international airport and some of the Sydney Olympic stuff, was experience that I would never get back in the UK. The projects in the UK were just not of the same scale or size, and I felt that the Brisbane offered that opportunity at that time, and I still feel it offers that opportunity even now, but on steroids. It's a completely different set of construction projects that are here now and will arrive over the next 8 to 10 years. So yeah, it was really family orientated as to why we came to Brisbane, but also the experience that it would offer me as a young QS at that stage.
That's one of the things that I always mention to maybe people looking at relocating from the UK or Ireland or overseas to Australia, is that you can sort of, what you'll get in 10 years is probably the equivalent of what you'll get in 25 years in the UK. You know, there's just so much more, whether it's opportunity or maybe it's the lack of skill set that maybe exists, capacity, there's so much demand. It's an incredible place. But one of the things I noticed is that you mentioned Napier Blakely Winter. So is that anything to do with Napier Blakely that exists in Australia? There's so many links here. It's incredible.
Correct. Yeah, sister company owned by the same people. Yeah, they were sister companies effectively. So, and those connections, I think, still exist today across not just those Napier Blakely, but other companies as well that have that cross pollination and cross connection. So, yeah, it did strike me. And I actually moved when in 2007. So that connection with Napier and Blakely actually came out to work with them. And that was as a result of the network that I had when I went back originally in the mid-90s.
What was it like going from the UK back to Brisbane? You know, you build up a bit of experience in the UK, and there's a lot of differences between what you do as a QS in the UK market compared to the Australian market. So what was that like, Andrew?
So I'm kind of torn here because at that stage, QSs that had been trained or had experience in the UK seemed to be very or much more sought after. I got the sense at that time that was because they felt that the training that we received was a lot more robust, a lot more technical, and certainly there seemed to be a demand for Scottish QSs. I don't know if that's because we've got this reputation of being tight and with money and all the rest of it, but anyway, from that aspect, you were kind of a rare commodity, and that's not being disparaging around the QSs that were trained in Australia. I always felt that they were as good as, if not better than my skill set. And bearing in mind, remember, I was a lousy QS. So, but yeah, the parallels were there in terms of the training that I received in those days. And obviously, that was old school scale ruler estimating, bills of quantities. The software was different. So it really was quite labor intensive to be that QS, and the differences in that regard were zero. They were the same. They were still very much as equals to myself at that stage. Definitely, I didn't really see an awful lot of difference between the two. They just went to university in the sunshine in their shorts and t-shirt, whereas I was trudging through 3 foot of snow. So.
Right, guys, so I'm absolutely pumped to say the Takeoff podcast is proud to be sponsored by RIB Software, the company behind some of the leading estimating software in the entire planet, including Costex, Candy, CX, and more. So firstly, if you didn't know, RIB are a powerhouse at providing innovative software solutions to the construction and engineering markets. They have over 500,000 users globally, are known universally as a solution provider for your entire project lifecycle, from planning to construction and beyond. RIB solutions help to ultimately connect people, processes, and data, so your project comes within budget, on time, and to the quality desired, all whilst reducing your business's carbon footprint. All this stuff matters, and RIB has the solutions. So if you're interested in finding out more, get on over to rib-software.com, reach out to your local team and quote Takeoff Podcast. For every listener who buys a subscription of RIB Costex, they will provide one free online training course. Okay guys, back to the episode. Right now, I could tell you if a Scottish QS came to the market with family links to Queensland, to Brisbane, there'd still be that same level of
Really?
interest. Oh, without doubt, especially because of the whole visa thing and reason for being in Australia, all that sort of stuff. It's certainly still high in demand. What sort of projects were you typically being involved with at the early stages of that Australian journey at that time?
Well, as I say, the Sydney Olympics was kicking around, so Brisbane International Airport. So yeah, I measured concrete and reinforcement for about 6 months. We did a lot of retail. I remember working on Capalaba Shopping Centre, measuring the tiling. I did Reef Casino up in Cairns. I actually was very lucky. I went up to Cairns for 3 months with WT and worked up there on the Reef Casino and the Cairns Central Shopping Centre. So it was a bit of a mixed bag at that stage, but I think once you got the tag for being someone who could measure concrete reinforcement, then you were the guy. So I remember doing down at Cable Ski World, where next door to that, a company called Dominion Homes. I don't even know if they're in existence anymore. They were building probably 200 lots down there, so residential at that stage on the northern end of the Gold Coast. That was pretty big. And again, that size of development in terms of that number of lots, you would never get that in the UK. Just didn't compare. So it was a mixed bag of different things, and one that I thoroughly enjoyed. It was so full of variety and a different environment and skill set, I think, that was required at that stage. So yeah.
What were the hardest parts, Andrew, at that time? Did you ever find difficulties in settling in or communicating with people or building relationships?
Oh, 100%. There was no, mobile phones were bricks in those days. The internet and things like Skype or WhatsApp didn't really exist to the degree where you could communicate regularly. So the hardest thing was I had no one here. It was me on my own with, some connections to people that you met through work. But that was the hardest. It did feel a long way from home at times, but the more you ingratiated yourself into the lifestyle and the way of living here, that dissipated over time. But it was always nice to go back. But that was the hardest thing, I think. And again, Mum was a widow at that stage, and I was youngest of three, two older sisters. So the only man in the family, if you can call me that, was 13,000 miles away. So, but it had to be done. It was good for me. It was good for my growth. It was good for my development. It was good for my independence. There were moments, as there always is, that you have some downtime and some low points, and you think, well, what the hell am I doing? But overall, it was a positive thing, and I've got it gave me resilience. It toughened me up, and here we are.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. It's a similar story to mine. My mum passed away when I was young. My dad's a widow by himself, living in Ireland. I was lucky because I could communicate with him, via. I've had 3 WhatsApp messages from him this morning. You can talk to each other. We probably have a better relationship because we've had that distance. Compared to maybe if you were sitting, around the corner from each other and doing each other's head. So these are the conversations I like to have because there's a reality in it. There's sometimes, you do face these moments where you go, oh, is this the right decision? I had a great interview with Matt Miles about 2-3 weeks ago. He's originally from England. He left Brisbane, came back after like 2 months because, he couldn't hack it back in the UK anymore. So there's different things that you go through. Not everything is perfect. But when you look at it and you go, it outweighs the benefits that you're getting, the opportunities that you're getting, the lifestyle that you're getting, it ultimately outweighs what you're used to back home.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I met Matt the Melbourne Cup actually a couple of years, and he was going back. This is 2 or 3 years ago now, and he was just about to head back to the UK. And I think those people that travel over here kind of fall into a couple of categories. The ones that settle in straight away and love it and, no issue. And the ones that are kind of uneasy and, oh, what have I done? And, you can't get the roots in and down into the ground. And so they go back and they think, oh, no, I shouldn't have done that. Let's go back again to Australia. So I think you kind of fall into those two categories. And neither is right or wrong, but the ones, pretty much the majority that go back after a short period of time, either stay or they go, actually, do you know what? For me in my situation and the way I want to live, I have to go back to Australia. So I've seen that quite a lot over my tenure being here and there. And the world is full of people that haven't settled and can't settle and go back and forward. And it's interesting. It just comes down to the individuals, and that's family ties and all the rest of it. Football teams, all that usual stuff that people are attached to and miss. And I still miss elements of home, as I'm sure you do too. There's nothing wrong with that. But I have no desire to go back and live there. My perfect retirement is buy a little small flat in near Dundee on the water and go over there for 2 months. But I would live here the majority of the time because it's just it's such a great place to be.
Yeah, no, sounds like an amazing retirement. No, I it's quite funny. Every Scottish man that I've met in Queensland, and there seems to be lots of Scottish people. I don't know what it is. But
it's the sun. We don't often see it.
Everyone's a Rangers fan, and I mean, I lean on the side of Celtic, so I find myself surrounded by about 10, Rangers men, and there's me as a bit of a Celtic fan, But you know what? All of that goes away, and that's what I love. There's none of that sort of like, you still, that still lingers back home in Ireland, Scotland. But see, when you're this side of the world, none of that matters, and it's just about having fun. People want to talk to you, and I think it's great.
100%. Yeah, my son is a passionate soccer player. He has been since he was 3. I would never have taken him to a football match in the UK until he was about 18, just because of, I'm a Hearts supporter from Edinburgh.
Yeah.
So we're Rangers supporters that can't afford the train fare through to Glasgow. So,
Yeah.
and I loved it. We used to go and watch the Brisbane Roar regularly as a family.
Yeah.
And when the kids were young and small, and he was a mascot one day on the pitch and walking out, and it was just such a great family atmosphere to be at a sporting event of that description, where you could go and be safe and be together, and that transcends to union and league and what have you. So yeah, that was a difference that I certainly noticed and felt immediately comfortable in the family environment for young kids.
Love that. Can't agree more. Sporting events in Australia are just magnificent. So just sort of back to the career. So obviously you spent a bit of time moving your way through the quantity surveying industry, Andrew. I note that you've had different positions, maybe with different construction firms, different property development organizations. So how did you make that leap from QS to something different? Because that's something I get a question about all the time.
So throughout my career, throughout all the jobs I've done, there's always been a thread of that QS element, be it commercial, contractual, estimating, whatever it is. And then inadvertently risk management or project management. A leap as more of a natural progression through networks, conversations, or you'd be good at this role because you've done X, Y, and Z, and the elements that you maybe don't know, the technical aspects you can learn as you go. But in terms of, I wouldn't use the word leap. I've been very fortunate I love talking to people and having a chat with strangers. I'll go and book 9 holes or 18 holes on the golf course with 3 randoms, just because I want to play golf, but 2, it's good to meet other people. And I've always had that natural curiosity with others and people. And I think that has probably been, or it has led to an awful lot of opportunities and conversations, and then into positions I never even thought or dreamed of that I would be considered for. I remember, I go back to when I was a junior QS and measuring concrete and reinforcement. I thought, well, is this my life? Is this the rest of my career? The construction side, again, came through a network conversation when I was at Gleeds in Brisbane here, and they were looking for someone. I had some construction knowledge, but not much. And the support was put in and around me in terms of those people that could provide and support me in that role. And again, that's always been questions that I've asked at those stages when it's getting to crunch time. We want to offer you a job. I think it's about being open and honest about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and being able to tease out how and where you can learn from others. I've been very fortunate to have some good mentors in my life, and still have to this day. And those people are wise counsel when you're taking those steps, I guess. Sometimes you can get the blinkers on. So yeah, it's not necessarily been a leap. It's been more a natural progression, should I say. And then I learned a lot on the way, on that journey, which has then stood me in good stead for the next position or role.
And I think one of the things that I'm noting, you're talking about people engaging your network within construction. One thing to be head of, project development, to be regional director, to be state manager, to have these job titles, people management is a big part of that. What do you think makes a good leader of people, manager of people, whatever you'd like to call it?
Having worked for managers before who employ certain styles, I would like to have thought that I've taken some of the good and the bad from all of those experiences and brought into the roles that I've been very fortunate to have been considered for. Look, there's no doubt people management and having that empathetic understanding. Everybody is different. Everybody needs to be looked at differently. But ultimately, if you're running a team, the collective horsepower that you need to harness through those individuals to create what you need to create as a team is the ultimate goal. So having that ability, that psychological ability to look and analyze individuals where they're, and getting them to be open and vulnerable about their strengths and weaknesses, and then trying to put a metaphorical armor around them to support them, grow and develop in the areas that they feel they're maybe not as strong as others. I think that ability in managers is key and critical. You have to be understanding, be able to listen, be empathetic and sympathetic. And ultimately, there are times when you have to have some tough conversations with people, but it's how you deliver those tough conversations. That dictatorial style doesn't work. It never worked with me. It used to just put me in a corner, and I would just, like most people, if you're put in a corner, you tend to get the blinkers on and come out sort of swinging. And I've worked for managers like that. You will do as I say and you will do as I do. I've never, ever felt that has been any way to treat teams, individuals, people that you're working with, consultants, people, clients, whoever it is, trying to understand what is going on in the background that it's like an onion, I guess, that you can assist with, help with, support, collaborate. Those are the real people managers that actually get benefit from their teams. And I very much, so my father was heavily into sports. He played golf, he played reunion, he played soccer, he played hockey, all that sort of stuff. And he was actually in the newspaper industry. He was always a big advocate that sport was a massive contributor to team environments. You would win and lose, it would build resilience, but you would also understand the strengths and weaknesses in that union side or football side or whatever it was. And as a captain or a co-captain, you would have to identify in order to support and develop. And I think those principles still apply today in business and professional theatres, definitely 100%.
Do you think that has changed? That's been an evolution? That's something that is maybe people are realizing more over the last few years, or has that always been the way, Andrew?
I think the resilience that some of our young people have is not as strong as maybe it was, when I was a young lad. I think they have resilience in other ways, but that sort of mental toughness that you have to have a thick skin. There are people out there that will always test that thick skin. I'm not being disparaging of the younger generations coming through, but I do think that they have everything on their plates now. They've got mobile phones and all the rest of it, and it's all available there and then. There was none of that when we were growing up. I remember when I was in that gap between leaving school with nothing and trying to get a job, writing letters to QS businesses to say, can I have a job? One Edinburgh old firm called Thomas and Adamson, who are still in existence today. In fact, one of the guys I went to uni with he's the managing director of it. I remember sitting on a typewriter and typing old Thomas a letter, and he interviewed me. And he said, well, you're not going to get a job here, but I wanted to meet you. And I wanted to meet you because I think you have to fail before you can succeed. And that's such a resonating statement. I was at a property council event last Thursday for International Women's Day. Raina Sinathambi said, you look at Springfield out in the western Queensland towards Ipswich and what they've done out there. And she said, it's no until it's yes. Now that's resilience right there. That level of ability to keep pushing through when you're told no, I think is different nowadays to what it was then. So yeah, I think if we can, and mental health's a massive issue, and so it should be. Every family has an issue. I mean, it's in my family as well. It's about the ability to support and develop and assist and coach and guide and mentor, and that also builds resilience too, in my opinion. So yeah, I think it is different nowadays to what it was then.
Guys, I'm interrupting this podcast today to give you some information as to what I actually do every single day. So I own and operate a business called Get In Executive Recruitment. We're a specialist boutique recruitment company, and we specialize purely in the pre-construction and commercial construction markets globally. We're really well known and respected for our work in estimating, cost management, quantity surveying, and contract administration. Because we're hyper niche, we don't have millions of candidates. We don't really even have thousands, but more times than not, we have the right candidate for the right job at the right time. Unlike a lot of recruitment agents out there, we are super experienced in what we do. We understand the market, we understand what makes our clients tick, and our candidates tick too. Each and every single assignment we work on undergoes an extensive executive search process. It's robust and it works 100% of the time. We've also got a team of 5 researchers who map our markets out globally within our niche. They're amazing. They allow us to work fast, which saves our clients time and money too. So if you're interested in our process, drop us a message. Now back to the episode. Yeah, you see it quite a lot. Like I'm 32, so I consider myself young, but at the same time, I'll read a CV and it'll say someone's born in 2002, and I don't know what to do with myself. But you don't want to paint the canvas and say all young people are
No.
are that, because that's not true at the same time. But at the same time, I largely say a lot of these problems come down to social media, in my opinion. I just feel like it's unhealthy. I feel like the constant awareness of all the crazy stuff that's happening all around the world. Like, I don't know, sometimes ignorance is bliss, in my opinion. There's just so many issues with regards to that. But I mean, I think that's a good question. Like there's going to be a wave of different young people coming into construction. How do we effectively lead and build resilience within organizations now?
And that starts with people who I think have got it themselves but can impart the not knowledge, I suppose, maybe that's the wrong word, but impart the experiences that demonstrate that it's okay to fail, and here's when I failed, and here's what I did and what I wouldn't do again. But look, hey, this is the path that then opened up because of that. I still believe strongly in the power of human engagement with one another, albeit we're going down the AI path. Let's celebrate that. I think that's a positive step forward in terms of technology, but I 100% agree with you. Social media is a massive cause, certainly in my immediate environment, of comparison to others, which is in most cases manufactured on the screen. It's not real. And that desire and drive to be like something that is on a little screen in front of you. So if we can remove that element and bring more of that human physical conversation around experience that is then passed down, I think from my own experience, that has been extremely useful in being able to have that contact with people and understand their experience, to then imply it to myself, to then pass on to others. Throughout a lot of my career over the last sort of 10 and 12 years, the ability to send an email, have you dealt with that problem, or have you spoken to that person? Yeah, I've sent them an email. Does my head in. Have you picked the phone up and offered to go and have a coffee or a chat or whatever it is? The power of that, it cannot be underestimated in terms of solving issues or collaborating on problems or finding solutions together. And that's the way we used to do it. I'm not saying that we abandon our current technological spheres and the way we interact with one another, but I still feel 100% that human element is something that we should never lose in order to build resilience into those younger generations coming through. If we maintain that as a skeleton, as a thread, then I don't think we'll be too far wrong. And there'll always be bumps, but I don't think we'll go too far wrong. But
agree.
We seem to be moving towards AI and building machines that replicate human, behaviors and psychological traits. Well, I get why we're doing that, but we're already here. We've already got that ability. Let's foster that. Let's embrace that. Let's use that.
100%. And that's actually an interesting point. I never really actually thought of it that way. We're already here. We don't need anything else. Yeah, I've actually got two people in my family, both the same age, both 20 years old. One of them is university, going to internships, doing everything that he can to, he's working 2 jobs at the same time, paying himself through university. And then I've got another one who just doesn't want to do anything with their life. Their parents are forcing them to go get a job. After 2 days, they're being sent home because they're crying. For me, old school principles work in many ways. I feel like we've got to understand what the new normal is, but still that the fundamental of talking to each other, building good communication skills, I think that it creates a healthier human being rather than someone who's just behind a WhatsApp screen in a dark room on a Tuesday afternoon. I just find that would be so depressing. And my own journey, like with social media, I used to be one of these guys that would post all the time on Instagram. I got rid of Instagram last year and I downloaded the chess app. And I've looked at my chess app the other day and I've played nearly 700 games of chess. And I'm telling you, I get so much more enjoyment out of a game of chess. and whether that's frustration or whether that's just... Last night, for example, I jumped off my sofa and yelled because I won a game with 0.8 seconds to go. And I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Grandmaster.
Yeah.
Grandmaster. Brilliant.
No, it's crazy. So no, I guess so some of the great things I'm hearing, obviously the industry is moving. There's so much going on in Queensland. It's a real positive energy at the moment. How are you seeing the market at present, Andrew?
I as you said earlier on, I was at Jones Lang LaSalle for 8 years and now at Gallagher Jeffs. Since I've kind of stepped out a little bit more out of the shadows, I suppose, the market is overall very positive. Yes, the US is challenged and capital is challenged at the moment. And, the old analogy of the US sneezes, everyone else catches a cold. So I think it might be a little bit lumpy in Australia nationally. Queensland seems to have this little bubble that's insulating, I guess, the infrastructure pipeline, the old word, the Olympics, etc. If you narrow it down to Queensland, I think the overall message is very positive. The challenges to that is cost of construction, etc. So those feasibility studies that are on the cusp of not going ahead are generally being tipped across into the no column because of the cost of construction. So there is no doubt we have to do an awful lot. I think there has to be a reset. I think there will be a reset at some point globally. That will have an effect. To what degree, I'm not an economic expert, but I think it will definitely have an effect. But in certain markets, positivity is a lot higher than just generally. Yeah, I'm certainly seeing that and having those conversations, and have done over the last 6 or 8 weeks, which does fill you with some creative juices, etc., that you can be involved in something that will change the landscape, not just down here in Brisbane, but nationally as a state. So.
Well, one of the things that I've spoken to a lot of my clients over the last few weeks is that everyone's getting a bit sharper at the moment. Everyone's getting a bit sharper with their pricing. We're now seeing a lot of subcontractors maybe, calling builders at the moment, trying to, looking to go for a coffee. That hasn't happened in a number of years. Relationships as well. What is your sort of philosophy behind working with people, connecting with people, building a network, Andrew?
My philosophy is there is always a connection to be had. May not lead to something directly for you, but it may lead indirectly to something else for someone else. And people have long memories. Queensland's a very relationship driven place to do work. I've still got relationships since I first came here 2007, what was that, 15, 16 years ago, who I still catch up with on a regular basis. We've never really done any work together, but it's ultimately they might know someone that has a conversation that says, oh, you actually should talk to Andrew or talk to whoever. So my philosophy is trying to join the dots, either directly or indirectly, and that as a pathway has certainly stood me in good stead. I would hope that, and I know others out there that do have a similar sort of philosophy. Business development or marketing yourself is an art. It's not just a question of having a chat and a coffee and then expecting something to walk through the door. There is an art to it, and it is about more so here about that relationship, developing that relationship, and not just having that conversation around business, but understanding the person behind the mask or the facade, and family, school, and sport, and all that sort of stuff. Generally, I like to have a 5-minute conversation about work, but the next hour is about what else is going on in the world.
Communicating with people when you don't need them. I think it's quite transparent, when people can see that there's a reason for this. It's kind of like building friendships as well to some extent. The deeper the relationship, the better in many cases. How do you think that's going to maybe impact construction over the next number of years?
I was having this conversation with an architect the other day, actually. He potentially sees people like planners as having a massive impact on their business. I think there'll be pockets that will have a major impact, but I also think there'll be pockets where that human element will override the AI component. So it's coming. Everybody knows it's coming. Where that's going to land and who that's going to land with, I don't know.
I put something out last year about how I think AI is going to change the industry. Some people took a bit of offense to it. It is going to make an impact in one way or another. My opinion, I would hope it doesn't make the impact that people are predicting. I think that if we are focusing on anything, the thing that we should be able to focus on is relationships and being able to communicate and being able to do those things like your client development. You mentioned it's an art. Have you any thoughts on that, Andrew?
In terms of, client development, etc.?
Yeah, client development, communication, and how important that is to the industry.
Well, so break that down. I said not that long ago, I was talking to my team, and I said, I was actually schooled in how you would walk into a room of 1,000 people and you'd be able to, or 500 people, and you'd be able to, in those days, work the room. LinkedIn didn't really, it was probably in its infancy. And I had a great mentor in the UK who was very good at being able to walk into that theatre, that environment, and be able to make connections and then grow those connections, and how you did that and work out, that you may not be talking to the right person or in the right role, but actually use those people that you have worked with and to have a relationship who would then gladly help you out to get you to the right person or the right company. So they laughed at me when I said, work in a room. But that's what we used to do way back when. And again, that enjoyment of meeting people and was part of that component. And still many of my clients in the UK are still our friends now, and I will catch up with them when I go back. There's no work there for me, but it's ultimately that the relationship and that friendship overrides all of that. Most of our problems in the construction world exist because of communication or lack of it or miscommunication or whatever it may be. And I think that the way we communicate and how we communicate, going back to what I said earlier on about the human element, we can resolve those problems a lot easier. We can also mitigate a lot of those problems at the front end by, again, having that level of interaction, understanding. I always have those conversations with people, be it a client or a team member, and I will always lead that with any questions. You happy with that? Everybody understands what we're doing and the timescale that we're doing it to. Speak now, and we want to hear your input, that kind of stuff, because that two-way street is key and critical to not having any issues down the track. But I do believe firmly that a lot of the problems are caused by miscommunication or lack of communication, or the style of communication.
I agree. I think the better that you are at communicating, the more that you invest in communicating, the cream is going to rise to the top in that case. I'm going through the process at the moment where I'm likely to place a candidate who's nearly 70 years old. And there's been other candidates in the process in their late 30s. And this particular candidate has more energy than them, more contacts than them, more drive than them. And I literally, I come off the phone just so inspired. Every time I speak to him, I'm just like, go on. It's great. So it just shows you if you invest in that now, that will benefit you for the rest of your life, Finishing the podcast, what are you looking forward to at the moment, Andrew? What's exciting you about the industry?
I think the next 8 to 10 years is going to be really exciting for the state. What we need to deliver, the way the city is evolving, the way the state is evolving, the new different types of industries. We mentioned AI, that knowledge precinct, that knowledge corridor, that knowledge environment is going to be a big part of the state's growth over the next 8 to 10 years. Definitely. I'm excited about that. I'm always, I'm 53. Technology was always a bit of I used to get the younger ones to help me out with all that sort of stuff. But actually, if you embrace it and dive and jump straight in and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, show me, then that journey is exciting. That journey is enthusiastic and heartwarming and one that is scary. But hey, it's a good ride. So I'm looking forward to being part of that. I'm looking forward to get my handicap golf down to single figures if I possibly can. We're working on that at the moment. But yeah, certainly this state, this country has a lot of development and growing and movement, and that for me, bringing it back to Brisbane and Southeast Queensland and Queensland as a whole is exciting. It's massively exciting, and hopefully, in 10 or 15 years' time, I'll be retired and I'll be watching it from the sidelines. But maybe not. Maybe I'll still be involved at 70. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
That would be good, wouldn't it?
Nobody
will want to employ me at that stage.
You just need the energy and the communication skills. That's all you need.
And the attitude. Yeah, attitude.
100%. Attitude is something you can't train. Finish this last question. What one piece of advice would you give a young person looking to break into the industry, or maybe someone at that early stage of the career looking to really push on? Well,
I guess there's probably two pieces there, and I'll go back to, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying it, that Rainus and Athambi, it's no until it's yes. That dogmatic desire to not be told something that you can't do. Always have that as an ability within yourself to be able to continually push until you get to a point. You might not get the full yes, but you get some of it. So having that, I would be, and I love growing younger people and mentoring them. I didn't have too many when I was that age, but I love that sort of stuff, and seeing those people be given a set of wings and they turn around and say to you, oh, well, if it wasn't for you and the opportunity you gave me, I wouldn't be here. I disagree with that. They gave you the opportunity. You were the one that grabbed it. You were the one that soared with it. And you were the one that have developed it yourself, just with support and help. If you see an opportunity, grab it, get in there, push hard, and don't accept it. And the other piece of advice I'd probably give, which actually came from a letter that I still got today, that was handwritten by one of my dad's colleagues when he passed away. And Bill Lothian, he's still a contact, he's an ex-sports journalist. He said, work hard, but always work hard, but the quality of how you work hard will be your lasting legacy. The quality of what you produce, that will define you. And I think that I still use that today. What you produce and how you produce it and the way you work is, people remember that. They know you've done a good job. They know you've given it your best shot. And if you come up against a problem, a gap, you ask a question. Don't be scared to ask. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And if anybody says that's a stupid question, then you really have to question whether you want to work with that person or that company. So I guess that would be the two pieces I would try and impart from these grey hairs.
Love that, Andrew. Brilliant way to finish the podcast. Absolutely fantastic. If there's any people out there who might want to touch base to say good day, client, person coming for the industry, What's the best way to get in contact? Is it LinkedIn? Drop you a message or?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm quite a vocal person out there, so you can come through the LinkedIn channel, or you can send me an email at andrewl@gj.com.au. Happy to be a sounding board, conversation, whatever it may be. Nothing is off the table. I love that element of people reaching out and asking for help and advice. As I say, I didn't have too much of it when I was younger, and those people in my life that I did have are very important and still very important. I think the more people that are out there that can and are willing to offer that, the better. So yeah, LinkedIn or the email address. Anybody, just feel free to reach out. No problem.
Andrew, been an absolute pleasure. I've absolutely loved the podcast. Thank you so much for being part of the Takeoff.
My pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity, Mick, and look forward to catching up with you in due course.
Before you go today, guys, I'm just going to ask you to do one thing. Can you please go to Apple right now or Spotify right now and just give us those 5 stars? Hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference you wouldn't believe. The whole idea of this show is to inspire, educate, and motivate our listeners. And we only do that if we're getting the best guests. The best guests want to see data. They want to see information. They want to see how many listeners that we get. And so all of this stuff is really, really important. So if you can just literally go and do that today, if you enjoy the show, just go and hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to continue to push this out there every Monday. So if you can, hit that 5-star button. And if you can't, even share it with a friend. Go on to WhatsApp, flick it on to your crew. Guys, thank you so much for listening. On to next week.